right, welcome back to another episode of the Podium Pusher podcast. We are back once again for another sprint weekend. This time we are stateside for the Miami Grand Prix. Brandon, how you feeling?
Feeling great. F1 is back in the United States. Really excited about that. Excited to watch some events live, and it's going to be great. It's going to be a fun weekend, so I'm excited.
I'm excited as well. It is unfortunate that maybe Miami isn't the best of tracks, but it's early in its life, so I'm willing to give it a chance. Recent years hasn't been the best of races, but who knows? Sprint race this weekend, mixing things up, might be a good time.
You never know. The last sprint race was really interesting. Through some excitement in there into the weekend, so it was good. You never know what can happen, and that's part of the great thing about Formula One, and even more so about sprint weekends.
Yeah, we're talking about wild things happening. Let's jump right into our predictions. Sprint pole prediction. I'm going wild. I've got Max Verstappen. I think he's going to get pole for the sprint race. We're doing some extra predictions this week. Last weekend, we didn't make any formal sprint predictions, but here we are making official sprint predictions. I'm going with Max Verstappen for sprint pole.
I think, yeah, it's a great choice. I think, Max had a great weekend last time out in China. But he wasn't perfect. And when Max tends to not have perfect weekends, the following weekends, usually 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 weekends after that are usually perfect for him. So I am also predicting Max Verstappen to be on sprint pole. Max has done really well at this track in the past, and I think he is excited to get back and have another chance at a better sprint portion of a sprint weekend. So I think it's going to be a good one for Max.
Yeah, Max is the only person to ever win a race in Miami. Miami started his massive winning streak last year. So I think right now he's the king of Miami, and there's no reason to think that anyone else is going to challenge him for that, which is why I have also predicted him as the sprint winner. I don't want to be boring and say that Max Verstappen for every single one of my predictions is going to be on pole and win everything. So I've switched it up a little bit later, a little spoiler alert, but I can't think of a reason to not pick him as my sprint winner. So Max Verstappen, I think he's going to win the sprint.
Yeah, I think especially if Max gets on pole, there's just no way that he's not winning a sprint. I think, Max has a lot of experience from starting races in pole position and winning them from pole position. So I think, Max gets away well and has a clean first corner, then there's no way he's not going to win the sprint race as well, which, as you may have gathered, Max is also my prediction for sprint winner. I just think there's no other logical choice. Like we saw last weekend, even if Max doesn't start at the front, he's probably still going to win.
Some might call it the safe choice. I think we're just going to go with calling it the realistic choice. As soon as another team, another driver gives me a reason to predict someone besides Max on a consistent basis, I'll pick someone besides Max on a consistent basis. But right now, I just got to make sure I can get those points where I can. I'm up by 2 in our predictions. I'm just going to sail in every single one of those Max Verstappen predictions and ride it on home to our predictions championship. But moving on to the main race, who do you have as pole position for the main Grand Prix on Sunday?
There for the main Grand Prix, switched it up a little bit. I predicted Carlos Sainz to be on pole for the main race. Carlos has had a great season so far. Both of the Ferrari drivers have. And, Charles has kind of had the edge as of late. I expect Carlos to kind of bounce back this weekend and have a good weekend in Miami. So I think Carlos Sainz is my pole prediction for the main Grand Prix.
I think that is a great prediction. So great that I've gone for his Ferrari teammate, Charles Leclerc. There's talks of a blue Ferrari this weekend. Ferrari down in the ocean, a little dolphin in Miami, put him on the front row. I don't know. I'm probably reaching here, but I'm going to keep throwing out a Charles Leclerc pole prediction. This isn't the first time that I've done it this season. One of these times I'm going to be right because that guy is just so good over one lap. We've already seen one wave of Ferrari upgrades. They don't have a massive one coming for this week. They wanted it for this week. It got pushed back to Imola. But who knows? Maybe the new paint will be enough to give a little bit of extra performance, and it's going to push Charles Leclerc to the front. but I could see a Charles Leclerc pole position this weekend in Miami.
Yeah, I think it's a great choice. Both of the Ferraris this year so far, especially, have been great in qualifying, and I think that this is a good moment here to stop and take a break talk about the possibility of a blue Ferrari here in Miami. There's been a lot of teasers. Obviously, you've seen probably the race suits and the merchandise, and Ferrari even posted a picture of a wheel cover that's blue. And when I tell you that I am so excited for the potential of an all blue Ferrari race car, I can't even express it to you. This is, I think, going to be an amazing livery if it's completely blue. So catch me buying all the little mini cars if it's a blue livery.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be great. I'm kind of expecting a blue, white, and carbon fiber type vibe. I'm hoping that it's not just a copy and paste of the normal livery, but in blue and white. I'm kind of hoping that they switch it up and do more of a nod towards their American racing history and, do a livery that we've seen in the past from a different Ferrari racing series. But yeah, it's gonna be cool to see it all in blue. There's still like a part of me that's like we haven't seen the car. They could show up in red. It hasn't happened. It's all over the
Yeah,
internet, but theoretically they could still show up in red. I'm hoping that they don't. I'm hoping that we do get to see the blue. I feel like they will. The drivers have come out with special helmets. They've teased all this. It's got to be blue.
it's
I'm
got to
excited
be.
for it. They're also announced a new title sponsor starting from this weekend, and that'll be Scuderia Ferrari HP, which is interesting. My biggest
Yeah,
fear with that is that they're going to show up with a blue car and then have the HP logo in blue, and it's going to be a different blue. Right off the bat, they got HP on the car, and it's going to look ugly. If they have any sense, if the Ferrari designers have any sense at all, they'll just use the white logo all year. Just make HP white. That's all you got to do. It's going to look
yep,
beautiful. Don't make it blue. Even when you go back to red, don't make it blue. It's going to look bad. There's no need to
yep,
do it. Just leave that
yep.
HP white, and we're all going to be fine.
That's interesting because I think Ferrari's always been very protective of their traditional red livery. I mean, it's iconic. It looks great. Every single year, it's very similar to the previous year, and every single year, it looks fantastic and it's great. But, you know, I'm not too worried about that. I think they're pretty smart with their designs and how the car looks because they are very traditional in terms of their livery. So, totally agree with you. I sure hope that it's a white HB logo. But man, I'm excited for whatever this blue car is going to look like. But there's like 10% of me that's like they're going to show up in red, and it's going to be you know just a little blue stripe down the side of the car or something crazy like that. But we'll see. It's going to be great.
Maybe they'll just like borrow the Alpine livery and it'll just be all carbon fiber with just a little bit of blue. And they're going to have like an extra 10th down the straights. And that's how they win a Grand Prix. Next thing we know, we've got a carbon fiber and red Ferrari showing up. And that's how we're racing for the rest of the year. Who knows? Either way, we're excited to see a blue Ferrari on track. Let's steer it back to our predictions. Who do you think is going to stand on the third step of the podium this time out in Miami?
Third step of the podium, I'm going with Sergio Perez. Sergio's had a great season so far. We've talked a lot about him in previous episodes. He has continued to kind of put things together, and I want to give him the credit that I did not give him at the beginning of the season so far. So I'm jumping back on the Sergio Perez bandwagon, and I think Sergio will be third this weekend.
This is gonna be different from what I have on the sheet, so you're gonna be surprised by this. But
Okay.
I'm gonna agree. I'm gonna put Sergio Perez in third place as well. I was just talking a couple podcasts ago about how Sergio Perez is slowly getting me back on the Sergio Perez hype train. And he hasn't done anything to get me off it yet. He hasn't messed up, hasn't had a terrible weekend all season. There's talks of him being Red Bull's first choice at the moment. So I gotta back Sergio. We're stateside, which is pretty close to his home of Mexico. So I bet there's going to be a lot of Sergio Perez fans. Anytime we go to a race here, there's always a lot of Sergio Perez fans. So I bet there will be some Sergio Perez magic in the air when they get to Miami. So I'm gonna agree with you. I'm gonna put Sergio Perez in third place as well. Second place, who you got?
Second place, I've got Carlos Sainz. So this kind of goes along with my poll prediction here. but ideally in my head here, walk with me on this journey a little bit. But got Carlos pole position for the main Grand Prix. He can't quite pull off the win. Obviously, Max is fantastic. The king of Miami. The Max passes him. Carlos is in second. That's my second place prediction. That's how I think it's going to play out.
I could see that happening. My second place prediction, I've gone for Lando Norris. In the past, McLaren haven't been great at Miami. They showed up in 2022 with an absolute dog of a car, and Lando Norris DNF for that race. Last year, they weren't all that great either, but they finally got a good car in Miami. Last weekend, everyone said China's not going to suit that McLaren, and it did. They had a great weekend. Lando Norris specifically had a very good weekend last time out in China. So I think sky's the limit for that McLaren right now. I think we're kind of a little unexpected about where they're going to end up. They could be closer to the Ferrari than we expect. They could still be a clear third fastest team. Either way, I think Lando Norris is going to secure another P2 at the Miami Grand Prix.
Just be another P2 in a long career of P2s for Lando.
First place, you kind of gave it away. Who you got?
I did. I've got Max Verstappen winning the Grand Prix. Like we talked about earlier, he's the king of Miami. I see no reason why he wouldn't win this race. So we'll see what happens, but I've got Max.
I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc. I don't care. I had Max Verstappen on my sheet. I'm switching it up to Charles Leclerc. I don't know if this means Max is going to finish fourth, if Max is going to DNF. More than likely, it means he DNFs. There's no way he finishes fourth in this Grand Prix unless something absolutely crazy happens. But I don't know. Miami has been a very boring track. There's part of me that thinks they scheduled the sprint here to kind of take away from the attention that it's a very boring track. So maybe they're just going to have an amazing race this year. Something's going to happen to Max. We're going to have a new winner. And I think it's going to be Charles Leclerc. I think he had a very strong weekend last time out in China. For it to be a bad weekend for Ferrari and for them to come out with as many points as they did as a team, I think Ferrari is riding a lot of momentum. As a team right now, they're very solidly second place. They should be the team that's there to pick up the pieces. I think Charles, had that slight edge on Carlos Sainz, getting a jab back in the teammate battle. So Charles Leclerc gonna get his first win of 2024 at the Miami Grand Prix.
I think that's a bold prediction. We'll see what happens, but you can never rule excitement out. So, but yeah, if Max definitely DNFs or has major damage and structurally damages his aerodynamics of his rocket ship, then I think Charles Leclerc is a great choice to pick up the pieces. It's got to be one of the Ferraris if Max doesn't. So,
yeah, who knows? Maybe this is the weekend Lewis Hamilton gets. I'm just kidding. There's no shot that happens. Not gonna happen at all. Who is your podium pusher of the weekend this time out in Miami?
My podium pusher of the weekend, kind of going along with my previous predictions, but I'm picking Carlos Sainz to be my podium pusher of the weekend. I just think Carlos is going to put it all together, have a great weekend. In the interest of being different, somebody who I think is also going to bounce back, but maybe not podium pusher of the weekend material, is Oscar Piastri. I think Oscar is going to have a solid weekend for the team. He's not going to be fighting for podiums or anything, but he's going to be running like P4 to P7. He's going to pick up a solid haul of points. So Carlos Sainz is my podium pusher of the weekend prediction, but in the interest of highlighting another driver, I think Oscar's going to have a solid weekend too.
The real question is, if Oscar Piastri is in that range and picks up a good haul of points, but still has that gap to Lando Norris, is it still a solid weekend for him, or is it just like he finished where the car should be, but kind of concerning that there's that big gap to his teammate?
That's a great question. I think, I mean, at the end of the day, I think you got to look at it and say, like, yeah, it's a solid weekend for Oscar. I mean, he's still learning. He's become a lot more consistent, but there's that gap to Lando, and he's, got to figure out how he can take the next jump to Lando and close that gap. So I would say it's still a solid weekend from him, but, that does give some pause.
Yeah, it's a solid weekend with an asterisk on it. Obviously, he had that big gap to Lando last time out in China, but also had some pretty big diffuser damage thanks to Lance Stroll just sending it up the backside of Daniel Ricciardo. So I think there is still time for Oscar Piastri to close that gap down to Lando Norris. I don't think we've seen enough racing in this season to be able to fully determine if Oscar Piastri is still having the same tire wear problems that he's had last year. There's still, I think as we continue to go to tracks that he will now have visited for a second time, I think we'll begin to get a bigger picture. But I do think Oscar Piastri, I think he's having a solid season. Nothing wrong with his year so far, and definitely shouldn't be ready to say that he has this massive gap to Lando Norris. My podium pusher is Charles Leclerc. If I'm going to predict him to win the race, then he better be my podium pusher of the weekend. Kind of didn't plan this. Is kind of all coming together. I changed my mind on who I think is going to win at the last minute, and it just worked out that Charles Leclerc was written down as my podium pusher, and I'm going with it. So if he comes out on top, he has to be the podium pusher of the weekend. But I'm not making that a requirement. He doesn't have to win to be the podium pusher of the weekend. I want that to be said right now. If he brings home a P2, I think that's great. Brings home solid Hall of points, beats his teammate. The argument will be made on my side, no matter what happens.
Definitely, and we've predicted, or not predicted, but named many drivers who haven't won the podium push of the weekend before. So it's definitely not a requirement to be podium push of the weekend. Just have to have the best weekend out there on the grid, which doesn't always mean winning, I guess.
Especially when Max Verstappen is out on track. Who is your back marker of the weekend for Miami?
My prediction for back marker of the weekend is Valtteri Bottas. Again, the news this week with Nico Hülkenberg jumping ship from Haas, moving over to big F1 kick Sauber F1 team is, kind of got to be pretty concerning for Valtteri, I would think. We've talked about it before of them kind of keeping one driver, one like older experienced driver, and experimenting with a younger driver. And Nico's pretty experienced. And if I was Valtteri, that would make me not very happy. So can't imagine a world where it's Valtteri and Nico as teammates in that car. So we'll see. But I think that's going to get to Valtteri, and he's going to have a bad weekend.
Both Sauber drivers are gone for sure. We've always been predicting that it's going to be Valtteri as the veteran driver, and Teo Porcher is going to be the young guy in the seat next to him. Now that they've signed Nico, they're gone. There's no way Teo's not in that car for next year. You could make the argument that Valtteri could still end up in that seat, and you could see an all-rookie lineup at Haas of Teo Porcher and Ollie Behrman, like Haas have done in the past with an all-rookie lineup. I don't necessarily think that Haas want to do that, but I also don't think that they want to re-sign Kevin Magnussen because he has been underperforming so much as of late. So I think Haas are in a real predicament because I don't think they wanted to see Nico Hülkenberg go. I think their dream lineup would have been Ollie Behrman and Nico Hülkenberg. I think if we see an Ollie Behrman, Kevin Magnussen lineup at Haas next year, then I think we're going to see a lot of opportunities for points slip away from the team just due to inexperience and lack of driving ability within that team. So, I think that driver situation that we kind of thought was all playing out. We're seeing another appendix domino. All I'm saying is Carlos Sainz had his appendix removed, and now here we are. So who knows what's going to happen? Who knows if you can throw Adrian Newey going to Ferrari in that appendix domino? I don't know. But this silly season really is shaping up to be something else. My back marker of the weekend is Pierre Gasly. Alpine might just be the worst team on the grid. I know Esteban Ocon finished 11th last weekend. He shouldn't have. If, Lance Stroll didn't decide to send it up Daniel Ricciardo and Kevin Magnussen take out Yuki Tsunoda, you would have had, and Valtteri Bottas even DNFing, you would have had Esteban Ocon finishing like P14 or P15. So that 11th was a little elevated. Second, he was pretty far off the points. It wasn't like he was close. Nico Hülkenberg had that P10 locked up. It was fine. but Alpine not in a good place, still not bringing any major upgrades as far as I'm aware. Pierre Gasly has been the one who has struggled more at Alpine, and so I just see another bad weekend coming for Pierre Gasly.
Yeah, it is unfortunate, but I would tend to agree that Alpine's one, the worst team on the grid, and two, Pierre's going to get the brunt of it if they can't figure things out. So
It's unfortunate. I saw a post on Instagram today that was like Pierre Gasly 2020 results, and I was like, man, just put him back in that Toro Rosso and let him go. I guess they're AlphaTauri in 2020, but you get the point.
yeah,
It's just kind of sad. I don't know if I don't want to say that Pierre's fallen off. Nothing crazy has happened. He had a great year last year and beat Esteban Ocon his first year in the team. It's just I want to say he's more limited by the car, but I don't think we're deep enough in the season to fully make any definitive statements anyways.
I would agree with that. I think Pierre's kind of just had a bad stroke of luck, with kind of moving over, making the jump to Alpine, and then Alpine kind of taking a nosedive, if you will, this year. So I don't know. It's been a bad stroke of luck, and it's a tough situation for him. But given the right car, I think Pierre can still perform. I think he's a great driver. So
That'd be crazy. You put Pierre Gasly in that Haas next to Ollie Behrman. I'm not saying it's official, and I haven't heard a single rumor about it. But if it happens, timestamp this podcast right here. Say Justin called it. I would say it's not out of the equation. I think Pierre Gasly's not happy. I think he might want out. Haas is that open seat. Somehow they're better than Alpine right now, and maybe have more of an upward trajectory than Alpine do. Maybe that seat's not looking so bad.
I don't know. At the very least, if I was Pierre, I'd be looking at that and being, that's just a sideways step at the worst. At the best, maybe I can score some points again. Remember that feeling of what it's like to finish in the top 10 of a Formula One race. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to think about, but I think it's a possibility. And, Justin called it right now, right here, right now. So
right here, right now, based on what's happened this silly season so far, you can't count anything out. Nothing is out of the question. Ever since we've seen Lewis Hamilton move to Ferrari, who knows what could happen? Contracts don't mean anything. The world is open. Who knows?
Yep.
All right, let's wrap this thing up. What are your two bold predictions for the Miami Grand Prix?
My two bold predictions for the Miami Grand Prix. First, I have that there's going to be 5 retirements across the sprint race and the Grand Prix. So, hopefully those don't all happen in the same race or all at once, but I guess they could. But I'm saying at least 5 retirements. I think we've had kind of a lot of retirements so far this season. And so I'm continuing along that trend, and I'm predicting 5 retirements across the weekend. And then my second prediction, and I'm going along with what I was talking about earlier, Oscar Piastri scoring at least 8 points across both races. Like I said, I think he's going to finish in that P4 to P7 range across the sprint and the Grand Prix, and that should get him roughly around 8 points or more. So those are my two predictions.
All right. I think the first one's a little more bold than the second. You should think that Oscar Piastri is going to score at least 8 points, but with there being the top 3 teams and Fernando Alonso, and then maybe throw in a rogue Mercedes driver, it's not guaranteed, so I'll allow it. And then I think last weekend we had 5 retirements exactly, so it could happen again with there being the sprint race. It opens up your possibilities. So I think those are 2 good predictions.
I'll amend it. I'll say Oscar Piastri scoring at least 10 points.
10. Wow. I wasn't going to make you do it, but you can have it. All right.
Yeah.
You're not getting bonus points for it, but I'll take it. Mark it down. Official prediction was 10 points. That's what he said. All right. My 2 bold predictions for the Miami Grand Prix is that at least 2 teams in the bottom 5 of the Constructors' Championships will score points. So that could be Alpine, Williams, Haas, RB, or Sauber. I don't think that's going to happen in the sprint. I mean, you could say that there's extra chances because of the sprint race, but with sprint only being top 8, the likelihood of that happening is not super high. But, who knows? Little Nico Hulkenberg, P6 in qualifying, P8 in the race. It could happen. So 2 bottom 5 teams score points across the whole weekend. And then I think there's going to be a turn 1 incident in one of the races at the start. Miami's straight is not that long. The run down to turn 1, it's not that long. It definitely gets a little narrow. So I could see a turn 1 incident. I don't think there's any rain in the forecast right now, but it's Florida, so anything could happen at any time. Maybe that will add some to it, but I could definitely see a turn 1 incident at the start of one of the Grand Prix.
Yeah, I think that second one with the turn 1 incident is a great prediction. I think it'd be awesome to see a turn 1 incident. Obviously not one where anyone gets hurt, but there's some excitement in there. Throw 5 retirements in there because of a turn 1 incident. Whatever. We'll see what happens.
We both get a point out of that. Who knows? Who knows? All right, that wraps up our predictions for the Miami Grand Prix sprint and race. We've talked about it all. Brandon, what are your parting podium thoughts for these lovely people?
Parting podium thoughts is that, we said it, Formula One's back in the United States, and the next time Formula One visits the United States, we're going to be there. So I'm excited for Austin and excited for Miami. So here we go. Yeah, it's going to be great. So I'm just excited for this weekend and being able to watch live Formula One events.
Yeah, I'm definitely more excited for Formula One to be back in Austin than I am for Miami, even though Miami is right around the corner. I'm just hoping that Miami is a good race because Formula One in America, it's been getting a bad rap recently. And it's not our fault they keep adding races here. Us American Formula One fans, we're nice people. We love watching the sport just as much as you do. And it's not our fault they just keep throwing out trash tracks. But Vegas ended up being good last year. No one thought it was going to be good. After the first couple sessions last weekend, we thought it was going to be terrible last time we were out in Vegas. So who knows? Maybe Miami can redeem itself this year. I'm not super confident, but it just might do it.
It might. You never know. And Austin has provided great racing the past few years with some excitement thrown in the mix. So that's good too. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to sound biased, but Circuit of the Americas is clearly the best track in America. And there's no debate about it. But, what can you do? What can you do? We're just going to keep going. That's what we're going to do. We're just going to keep going. All right. Thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Podium Pusher podcast. As always, feel free to like, subscribe, follow us on all of the places, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find us. We will see you guys in the next one.
See ya.